And you did just kind of gloss over the fact that you were a part of a Fred Sanford award-winning ensemble in 2010, which I will not gloss over. And a good friend of Mike and mine who marched Rhythm X with us, Jared Quartz, who we did have on here, filled that bass spot. So one of my, I guess, and this will tag on to like maybe some teaching tools and stuff that you picked up, but one of my most, or like memorable moments from that show for some reason is the end of the quad break. They're just doing all this crazy sweep stuff and the pit intro into the end of that just comes out of nowhere, and it's just this like crescendo, and you really hear it in the timpani, and I'm just like, for the front to time that coming out of this just kind of mixed meter hemiola quad break is pretty impeccable, and that's one of the most impressive things in that show in my opinion. But yeah,
Go ahead,
go for it. Yeah, I'll let you take it away.
I was just gonna say, I mean, that movement in particular was so much fun to play, and it just felt really good. It laid well in the hands. But it's funny you talk about that, because I'm recalling like how the things that we did to get that going, and it kind of ties back to what I was saying about like the whole group and the culture was like this understanding of like we had the single focus of making the music the best it could be. Like that was the goal. Like, yeah, we would love to like win drums, and yeah, we but the focus was always on like, no matter what, that's something that can't be taken away, which is like, we're going to play this music at the highest level possible. And there was a real understanding of the correlation between the front ensemble and the battery parts. And with that in particular, like, I think the phrase before that, there were a lot of these like isolated stabs that.
Joom, joom,
So there would be many nights where on the bus, like I remember sitting with Matt Pinland and having him drum the quad and like trying to learn the quad feature so that I could understand how my part fit in with that. And the funny thing is, the timpanist that year was Tyler Salmons, and he was roommates with one of the quad players, like in real life, not drum corps life. And so I think if I can remember correctly, that lick that Tyler ended up playing on the timpani was kind of like in a rehearsal. Paul was like, Tyler, can you just like add the lick on the timpani? And so, you know, as pit folks, like it was our job to know their book, and I think he was able to put that in immediately because he already knew the book. And I think that's one of the clever things about being in those ensembles, and one of the things I've picked up and really try to utilize myself as a teacher is trying to give comments that force the student to find the answer versus just giving them the answer. You know what I mean? And meaning like, Paul does this very deliberate thing when we are adding in, like one of the things I think about when I think about like Vanguard and back in the day Phantom Regiment, or before that Crown, is the use of symbol textures and to accent and highlight things. And just like, I learned so much about like how to voice symbols from just listening to those recordings. But the way they get added in is super organic. It's not ever written in on our parts necessarily. It's added in as we go, and he has a specific way of doing it, saying like, okay, you know what, the peak of the battery solo, I want this symbol here, or like at the end of that triplet roll. He says it that way versus saying measure 43, add this in. And he's doing that so that you are forced to listen for the part and understand what they're playing. And that was one of those things that like as the time as a member, like it kind of creates this like, oh, okay, I got to get this right. But he's leading you to the answer without even saying the answer, and therefore you always nail it because you know exactly what you're playing with, versus like it would be so easy to be like, okay, letter A, just add this in. But by talking about what it was that you're playing with and not giving you that information, you're forced to listen so much more intently to that. And
I love that, especially in an activity that by nature lends itself to a lot of rote teaching, just because of doing endless reps on reps on reps, finding ways to create more and more musicality and organic, just like circumstance that happens, because the shows aren't going to stay in time anyway. We try to, but they're not going to.
Wait, you mean drum corps aren't in time 100% at the tempo they want?
Well, yeah, they especially weren't back in the days when they didn't have long rangers. But
no, dude, back in the day, the push and pull of organic performances was insane.
But there's just like an energy about that.
Yeah, 100%.